Could dragons on Westeros fly? Aeronautical engineering and math say they could. But I recently posted a video concerning the dragon slayers of Rhodes. There was a dragon in Rhodes, there was a dragon in Kefalonia. And there were knights from Europe that came after studying how to do away with them, because they were, of course, threatening and bringing danger to the populations there. And they existed. We even have a report of such an existence in the Holy Bible. The ancient Greeks also have references to heroes who did away with the fire-breathing dragons, but we also have the Bible talking about a creature called the Leviathan. In Job 41:18, let me read it for you. The fire-breathing monster of enormous size that lived in the water. It says here, quote, its snorting throws out flashes of light. Its eyes are like the rays of dawn. Flames stream from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth. End quote. This is from Job 18-21. Amazing. I'll try and leave a link below for you. I'll find that for you so you can see it. I had gone on pilgrimage to the island of Kefalonia with my family one summer, and we wanted to take a day trip to one of the beautiful beaches there on the west coast. And they told us to go, while we were there, to go and visit this certain monastery. It was a convent, actually, because it had a museum. And the museum had this dragon skeleton in it. And it was winged, actually. It was a winged skeleton of a huge thing. And I used to be a bio major. And I never, ever saw any type of skeleton like this. I mean, okay, we've all seen dinosaur skeletons, but this thing was something else. It had wings. It was at least 20-25 feet long. Anyway, going to the article here by the conversation. Could dragons fly? Aeronautical engineering and math say they could. This is by Guy Granton, visiting senior research fellow aeronautics, Brunel University in London. Like many people, he says, I have recently become fascinated the lives and loves of the ruling classes of the people of Westeros, where the occasionally charming inhabitants spend a lot of time bickering about who is in charge. Game of Thrones is very entertaining, but don't get attached to any of the characters, as the lifespan in their world does seem quite variable. One of the many aspiring rulers, Daenerys Targaryen, spends a fair bit of her time around the occasionally riding dragons. My background as an aeronautic engineer got me thinking about the mythical creatures, and it struck me that in order to fly, their world must work a bit differently compared to Earth. It's possible to estimate the size of a dragon by comparison to Daenerys, who looks to be about 5'3" tall, with a mass of about 132 pounds. The dragon's body seems to be about 4 times as long as her, around 5 times as deep, and about twice as wide, with a tail about the same length again and about as thick as her body. Assuming the density of the dragon and woman are about the same, when a fully grown dragon's mass must be about 44 times that of Daenerys, around 570 pounds, 5,700 pounds. Considering everyone in Westeros seems to move in a similar way to us on Earth, let's assume the same gravitational pull, which puts the dragon's weight at 26,000 newtons, which we'll call W, at a nominal acceleration due to gravity of 10 meters per second. That's 32 feet per second. And if we're to understand the aerodynamics of flying dragons, we need 2 more bits of information. First, the wing area. Each wing seems to have a span roughly twice the dragon's main body length. So let's approximate the wings as 2 rectangles about 13 by 26 feet or 340 feet squared, which we'll call S in our formula. Second, the stalling speed, or slowest the dragon can safely fly before it falls out of the sky. It would be reasonable to guess that dragons take off and land at roughly their stalling speed, just as airplanes and birds do. Judging by the programs, it seems that the dragon's body length of about 13 meters, that's what we said, about 13 meters, 26 feet, passes by in about 3 seconds, which puts the stalling speed at about 4.3 meters per second or 14 feet per second. And they have this beautiful formula here. Dragon aerodynamics. As an engineer, when presented with any problem, I usually resort to mathematics, in this case, the standard lift equation. If we use the standard Earth sea level air density, this gives the lift coefficient of 36, which is completely unrealistic. By comparison, a Rogallo winged microlight airplane, a tiny single or two-seater airplane comprising a light frame and a small engine, suspended below a hang-gliding style textile wing, would have a lift coefficient about 2.2 and 2.7. No doubt, evolution has adapted the dragon's wing to be highly efficient, but I think to make some assumptions here, we went for a maximum lift coefficient of 3.5. Disregarding the possibility of magic, this tells us that the atmosphere of Westeros must be far more dense than ours. Using the same figure, we can work out just how dense. 12 kilometers per meter square, or about 10 times that on Earth, of Earth's normal. Sounds unpleasantly high, but actually isn't that bad. It's about what a driver would experience at 100 miles depth, a diver that it is, would experience at 100 meters depth, 300 feet down, perfectly survivable. There's empirical evidence that supports this. Watching a few episodes of Game of Thrones, you'll notice that pretty much anybody can pick up a sword or a spear and throw it distances that an Olympic javelin thrower would be deeply envious of. Given that gravity seems to be roughly similar to ours, this suggests the throwing weapons are generating much more lift than on Earth, consistent with an atmosphere of higher density. Okay, there's something in the air, he says here. What is the mix of gases in this atmosphere, I wonder? Earth's atmosphere is 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, 1% various other gases. We know that 21% oxygen is fine. You and I are breathing it at the moment, while 30% oxygen concentrations causes just about everything to become highly flammable. Beyond that starts to verge on explosive. This seems quite likely on Westeros, as anybody going near the slightest puff of dragon breath seems to catch fire. While it's noticeable that most of the locals are all paranoid about lighting fires anywhere except inside a stone castle. Westeros probably has a high-density air with around 30% oxygen, but no more. What of the rest? I'm going to hazard an educated guess here that it may not be nitrogen that we're used to on Earth, but it's instead argon, an inert gas which is the next most common gas on Earth after nitrogen. Argon is 42% more dense than nitrogen and would allow a higher density atmosphere at a pressure a bit lower than 10 bar. There are two laws relating to gases that can be used here to work out the behavior of air mix of argon and oxygen. Charles' law to add the components up, and Boyle's law to show what happens when the pressure increases. Applying these, I can show that at about 7 atmospheres pressure, at 70% argon, 30% oxygen, atmosphere has our air density of 12 kilograms per meter squared, and so dragons can fly. In simple terms, we can have a more dense atmosphere if the air is heavier, in this case by replacing the inert nitrogen we have on Earth with a heavier, more accurately denser argon. This argon-oxygen, or argox, mix will actually be moderately narcotic when breathing it at high pressures. Perhaps this might in part explain the regularly irrational and downright aggressive behavior seen among many citizens of Westeros. So a bit of basic physics, aerodynamics, some working knowledge of human physiology can tell you a lot about Westeros, where dragons fly, fire is to be feared, and the people's irrational behavior is not necessarily down to what they're drinking, but what they're breathing. All right, so I'll leave a link below for you for this the conversation. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.